Screw it. I can say whatever I want at the end of the video. No one's watching anyway at this point. I'd be lying if it's not a little tempting right now. Yo, it's Chris. You know what's fun? Essen. I'm going to tell you the games on my radar. I'm going to tell you the games that I won't get. I'm going to tell you the games that you should get. I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't get those games. I'm going to give you all of that in one. Because, again, the Essen games that you have to buy, the Essen games that you must play, the Essen games that somebody has to bring you over because you're on a different continent. Okay, facetiousness, sarcasm, seriousness aside, again, games that are going to make my wish list, games that I think are going to stand the test of time, not just games that are going to be the flash in the pan from whatever convention, whatever part of the year it is, right? The ones that are on my radar. And now, again, full disclaimer at the beginning of this video. I browse lists. I look at videos. I look at geek lists all over the Board Game Geeks. And my list is always stuff that is going to be new. Not stuff that's previously out. Not stuff that's going to be available there as well. But a little bit more of the, this is where I'm going to get it first, for the most part. I got nothing else. You ready? Let's go. I think it's always interesting, as a side note, before we get into the list formally, to see what sort of content there actually is out for these games in the first place. Because some of them have zero content. Some of them already have reviews for games that are not released yet. And so when I see this, it always goes, okay, you know you're in the who's who if you're getting the early Essen releases, right? Anyway, so let's go, right? I'm going to talk you through my big ones. The ones that I have looked at. I have looked at the mechanics. I have looked at the descriptions. I've looked at anything that I can get my eyes or hands on online in order to make this list. And again, some of these are going to be personally speaking. Some of these are going to be professionally speaking. And some of these are just going to be, you know what? This one should probably be on your radar. Not because it's necessarily a great fit for me personally, but boy, howdy, I'll tell you right now, I'm calling it. I'm calling my shot, right? I've got a few of those on this list as well. First up, game, not for me, but I'm calling my shot. I think this is going to be one of the ones that keep on your radar if you're looking for supposedly more of a middleweight Euro to come out of this one, right? Not a fan of the theme. Galileo Galilei. You're discovering what Galileo couldn't. New planets, new star systems, area majority, a little bit of building to go along with it, and in the deck bag pool sense, not in the actual physical, but it's Euro style doing those things, developing your telescope, scientific breakthroughs, using one of 5 actions that you can evolve into 3 other better ones, collecting cards of said planets, star systems, lenses, and being wary of Inquisitors. No one ever expects the Spanish Inquisition! And they might arrive unwelcomed and ruin your fame. But I'm going to make this, one of the ones that I think is going to be a little bit better overall if you're looking for more of the Euro. Now, what else we got? Well, we're going to go personally speaking for a few of these as well then. Lord of the Rings, Duel for the Ages, right? Lord of the Rings, 7 Wonders Duel. That's what it is. All the fanboys, fanboying it over Gen Con. Pro, great. Now, as much as everyone loves 7 Wonders Duel, the also issue to go along with that is that there's also a couple expansions because the expansions actually make it better. Is that incorporation already going to be in the base game so that it is not necessary? I do not want to hear 6 months from now that you planned a motherfrickin' expansion for this game, knowing that you pulled a mechanic out that should have already been in based off of the first time around with your reskin now the second time, right? I'll be honest with you. I haven't watched any video. I don't know how different, how true, how whatever this is. I'm still personally probably higher on the Ultimate Edition of Lord of the Rings Confrontation from Ghost Galaxy over on GameFound, supposedly going to be launching sometime between now and the end of the year. However, this is going to be more straightforward. That is more abstract strategy. This is more tactical card-driven, time constraint. And so it's going to be easier to play from that aspect of things. Wide retail release? Well, we're looking at October, November-ish anyway. And so what is the time frame going to look like outside of Essen? Because I guess that's the other question I should have posed at the beginning of the video, right? some of these Essen releases, some of them are going to get wide retail release shortly after or around. Several of these others, many of these others, may not be anytime motherfucking soon. I'm looking at Evenfall from last year, from Essen last year, right? Because it was a good 6, 8, 10 months almost after, I guess maybe like what, say June, July-ish, that it got wide retail in North America. So yeah, I mean, you're talking about 9 months post Essen for a release. If you weren't one of the lucky few that had a mule, or, you know, you can buy your own plane tickets, head over there and spend a couple grand to get a, you know, $20, $40 game, essentially, right? I'm jealous. It's jealousy speaking, because I can't. And, you know, again, it's one of those things I'll say every video when I talk about these conventions. Get the emails for the conventions and they say, come to our booth. And you're like, well, what if I can't come to your booth? Too bad. Sorry, I can't help myself. So then we're going to go separately, but we're also going to stick with the theme here. Games I own. Ha! But games I want more of. Speaking of Evenfall, let's just go with the expansion, the Artifacts expansion. I want to know more about this. Is this going to make a card-driven tableau system that much better? Subsequently, tying right into that as well, Vale of Eternity. I'm one of those naysayers that I was not completely, totally, utterly enamored with Vale of Eternity the first time around. And maybe that's just because we play it exclusively at the 2-player count, where the dynamic isn't as But I need more cards. You know, when I can get through all the cards, and I'm not a huge fan of the meta. I'm meta-metaing your, I know what you're metaing, meta style that these games can become with limited stock. And again, I say that sort of ironically and sort of knowingly that I just said that I love a Lord of the Rings confrontation, right? Where it's total meta, right? I'm nothing if not a hypocrite on every single video. So that's going to be my question, is how much more is it adding? Is it just adding more of a good thing? Or is it going to try and complicate and add additional mechanisms? Truth be told, I wouldn't mind an additional mechanism. I was just playing, well, it's probably going to go live either shortly before or shortly after this, so who cares, right? Spoilers. Cascadia, the rolling versions, right? The rolling rights, rolling hills, rolling rivers. And I think it overall, fantastic game. Fantastic. I don't think you need to own both of them. I don't think they're drastically different. That's a whole nother side note. But I don't have the little mini expansions that went along with them that I think would actually make them freaking ecstatically awesome. And that's irritating, because now I'm going to have to try and go pick them up separately. I don't know how wide available they are. But that's, you know, what I said back earlier with the Lord of the Rings, Seven Wonders Duel, right? Where I hope you don't pull stuff out that really can be a make it or break it, or just essentially make it awesome in the first place. That's my fear. So we'll see what Vale of Eternity can do from that aspect of things. Now I'm going to throw this next one up there just because I know how good it is. This is the only one on this list that I have actually played. This is the only one that I got a chance to play. This is the only one that even had any sort of form, I think, earlier in this same light. And this is Kelp, you know, Octopus versus Shark, that was on crowdfunding last year. 2-player, asymmetric, just like it says. You know, you got different mechanisms of how the octopus is trying to survive and the shark is trying to eat the octopus on a small grid-based situation. I think it's a fantastic game. I think people are really going to like it when they get their hands on it. I can't wait to get my copy. It's, again, that 2-player asymmetry that I freaking love. And so I think that they're going to have a little bit more availability there. And we'll see. But I think people are going to be very pleasantly surprised by this one. So I just wanted to give it a quick shout out there. Then we're going a completely opposite direction here. This one has some demo-ish availability, it sounds like, because it's also coming to crowdfunding later this year, and it needs to be on your radar if you, again, just as we were talking about asymmetry there a minute ago, this is Hegemonic Games, and they're bringing us World Order, the follow-up from Hegemony, right? And so we're going to see what they've got in store for us with more of a modern take on the global political system, area control style, a little bit lighter, a little bit shorter, a little bit easier to learn, a little bit more streamlined, right? And they're calling it, you know, never before seen international relation, area control style, multi-use variable player cards, and giving us just the United States versus China versus Russia versus the EU. How much are you interested in this? This is like Root for wargamers. I'm making that up. That's my own comparison. I'm putting words in other people's mouths that isn't accurate. But that's where my head goes, at least. Only it's just card driven instead of, otherwise. So I'm super intrigued by what they've got in store for us. There are tons of designer diaries and conversations behind the scenes in terms of what's going on over on the Board Game Geek forums. So again, if you want to know a little bit more and you want to see what else is going to be in store for the game from an actual lore, mechanistic approach, and asymmetry, give that a glance over. I've never been so excited to be completely out of my depth for a game and what it entails, and the geopolitical ramifications in 2010 conflicting on a map. And so that's what we're seeing with this one, and that's what you're going to be getting out of it, hopefully, as well. Then we're going to go a slightly different direction in addition, and this is Valkyries. This is from a very small indie publisher, and what this game is essentially it's a 3-card action tableau system where you have a map in front of you and a character, a standee, a token, whatever it is, surrounded by a grid of corresponding colored enemies that correlate to the cards in your hand. You have 3 of them in your hand. You play 2 of them on a turn-by-turn basis. One of them moves you to one of those same colored symbols, the next nearest one, in any direction. The second card allows you to knock out any of those color that you're then thus around. Rinse and repeat, and that's just the basic mode because that's the family kid-friendly version. Then you're going to have 2 other additional layering on of difficulty modes, one that's going to add different objectives, one that's going to add different equipment to allow you to take out enemies in different arrangements, as well as achieve different victory points, not only based on squarely which ones you take from a straight up numbers game. And so again, I'm super interested. There's no details on, wide availability or unavailability from that standpoint, but I wanted to give them a shout out, and I'm going to be reaching out to them too to kind of see where things are at. Then Battalion War of the Ancients. This got like the Board Game Geek sort of preview, touch on, nod like 6 months ago. And now it's coming to fruition because retail wide release is November, but we're going to have some exposure from Osprey Games and Paolo Mori, if you're familiar with him, giving us more of a fantasy realm of the previous like 2-player action-driven war-esque games that we've seen. Now, different though here is you're choosing your faction, considering the ranks, assembling them in the units, and then, sustaining them on the field with each different traits going to be available to you to make units stronger, but also being able to combine too many and it can become incredibly unwieldy. Now, again, it says 2 to 4. I worry about the team play in a game like this, or if you can actually do 4 head-to-head. But if you can do it and have very faction-specific cards that are balanced out, like they say, outmaneuvering, uniquely asymmetric again, give me it all over the place. So more exposure hopefully then at Essen, and we'll kind of see and wait because it'll also be on my retail don't buy for November list too. It's that much on my radar, folks. By the way, you may have recognized the name in case you didn't recognize the pedigree. Ethnos, Fall of Rome, Pandemic Style, Blitzkrieg World War II in 20 minutes, the new Libertalia as well as the old one, Dogs of War, right? Like, okay, pedigree right there. So that's why I'm excited. Speaking of pedigrees, let's just stay with this because this one is have a pedigree that you're going to recognize, even though you don't recognize the names maybe as much as a few of these others. Coming out from Ludo Nova as well is Flatiron. Or actually, I don't know why I said that. It's Flatiron, one word. You are constructing the Fuller Building, right? The 22-story historic skyscraper in Manhattan, New York in 1902. Does that sound thrilling and enthralling? Oh yeah, Chris, tell me all about it. But I mean, yeah, it's euros, right, folks? Dry euros. That's what we're talking about here in this video for the most part. Although I'm throwing in plenty that aren't that. Midweight, 2.3. Okay, maybe a little bit lighter than midweight. But the designers behind White Castle and Red Cathedral. So if either of those tickled your fancy, this is their latest. So that's why it's going to be interesting. Developing your companies by adding personal new cards to your board, allowing you to perform more and better actions on the surrounding streets, getting more points, undertaking construction via the tasks that are necessary while maintaining an impeccable public image and adhering to the decrees of the council in terms of the construction restraints in the first place. Roof is done, you're gone, it's over. Recognition to the one with the most points. So pedigree, weight, previous history, I'm intrigued. And although, again, like thematic incorporation does nothing for me, show me what you got. I'm all for it gameplay wise. But I guess at the same time, is this going to be too light for you Essen Euros, right? It's got a 2.3 on Board Game Geek. If you weren't a fan of the perceived lightness of Red Cathedral or White Castle, or those weren't enamoring for you in any way, this is not going to fill that need or that gap. And this is going to be by far and away one of the lighter Euro style things probably coming out of Essen in that same regard. So if you're looking for something heavier, this truly ain't going to be it either. It's probably not going to change your mind. We're hitting up all the small publishers that I can, folks. Sunrise Sunset, a duel between Seth and Horus from the Egyptian pantheon, where you've got sort of a battle line-esque feel, where you've got 3 different areas you're going to be playing cards to for a total of 6 cards on each side, using the abilities that may be present in the first place at those locations, but also doing your Marvel Snap vibe of having cards that will have different played and playing abilities as you go along. First person to deal 3 damage, it says, which I'm assuming you control those locations in order to do damage, wins the game. Take turns, play your cards one after another. Stealthily, they can be played face down, unlike cards that are also going to have to be played face up. Placement ability, everything else in between. Apply all the combat abilities of units, add up the power, and, well, do damage. So I love it. I love the concept of it. The artwork is fantastic. So we'll see Peril Local Games, what they got in store for us. One of the few I know it's getting more wide retail release around the time of Essen here in the next month or so. We have Tales of Arthurian Knights, the remake or reskinning of Tales of Arabian Nights, coming through from the WizKid side of things as a story narrative telling, choose your own adventure style game. Now, are you a bigger fan of King Arthur and, Lancelot and all of those things as you choose your actions, reward yourself with skills, renown, and nobility as you go across the board? Or do you want to, kind of choose whatever else tales you just want to do to have fun? I don't know, man. Like, is this going to be the paragraph-driven experience that you're looking for? Updated victory point system and, eliminating matrices and charts that the previous one was so known for? I have no idea. This is, another game that I personally look at and going, I'm glad it got a freaking reprint. I would be super glad, though, more so, if someone else brought it over, because this has try before I buy written all over it for me, personally speaking, just to see how I actually feel about it. Because sometimes, again, like narrative paragraph-driven games with more of that and less decision-making, less control, mitigation from that style of things, very, very hit or miss, group dynamic dependent heavily. And so that'd be my biggest concern with this one. And is changing something that people are previously nostalgic for going to be a win or not? Tell me if you've heard this one before. A zoo-esque animal park building tile situation, right? But hear me out. Spectacular from Chili Fox Games is doing it in a different way for 20 to 30 minutes and a 2-weight rating. That is going to be a selecting your tiles, selecting your dice, matching them up to the habitats of the same color, providing the decision making whether to draft a die of a certain value or the animal tile, which may not either be available at a later point of the game. Creating your connected tiles of the same habitat, scoring points based on the sum of the dice in that area, only if you have certain dice in certain families within the habitat as well. Building watchtowers, scoring those ways, parks making spectacular changes with more species, more points, and more variety. So this has me written all over it, but, we'll see. Because I could also see this one just, not being that much different as a whole. But I'm really intrigued to see what they can do with this. And again, it's got a few ratings on Board Game Geek, but take those with a grain of salt. But it speaks to me in the sense that I feel like this would be a good lower player count, but it also says that it plays 1 to 6. And if you can do so in a drafting style variant, Cascadia-esque vibe with, shades of other games as well from those elements, I'm all for it. One of the few other ones that just recently was on crowdfunding, actually, Moongate Designs Panda Spin from Carl Chudike. It gives you sort of a trick-taking, shed your card climbing game with double-headed cards a la Scout. All cards with orange side up and then get flipped over to the blue side. Unique playing condition, hand of 11 cards, and then laying them down as singles, sets, or runs to beat your opponents. Show out, run out of your cards, get points based on who has the most, and get to 20 you win over a certain, number of rounds, that whatever it takes to get there. And so I'm intrigued because I knew this one was going to be a quick turnaround. It's a light tricks taking, not really take that style, but vibes of Scout in a different way. And I am a huge fan, and so is my family, of Scout as a whole. Really been a great game for non-gamers, getting them interested. And so I want to see what Panda Spin can do. Is it going to hold up? Is it going to be that good? But 2 to 5 players, if it plays as well at all those counts, I'm going to be very happy. But is it also going to be a little bit, just not quite there? Because I think sometimes these also, what my expectations of group dynamics or what it can bring from a group dynamic standpoint just doesn't always quite mix, or my head isn't always as accurate as I think it is, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. Then we're sticking with the crowdfunding theme from this year, and we're going back to Explorers of Navoria, the one that had people comparing it to the root style aesthetic vibe from an artistic standpoint, while more of a tableau-driven action economy drafting game as a whole, and giving you a little bit more of the Euro style with some randomness. Drafting your adventure cards, using tokens you draft from the bag to visit locations, to do your worker placement. Your worker placement's reduced in power after each token is placed, so you want to visit them in a very specific order, otherwise you might miss out. Well, I mean, I actually like the aesthetic. I think it's right in that middling weight for me, and it's under an hour-esque play time, so it is planned for a retail, so I would imagine that backers will be getting their copies as well soon with the expansion that was also offered on crowdfunding. Is it going to be as fun? Is it going to be too light for people that were looking for something heavier, especially if this is under an hour and it's lighter than the Panda Spin rating that we were just talking about? So we'll just have to kind of wait and see. But I have some low expectations and hoping it overachieves. Next up, this one's going to be probably the farthest out there on the list, but it caught my eye and I wanted to mention it. Legion, the Siberian story. Now, truth be told, I'm not usually a big war game or war-themed game situation person. But this one, from a mechanical standpoint, from the publisher Albi, has really caught my eye as a 2-player asymmetric skirmish card game set after the events of World War I, from a Czechoslovakian standpoint, being stranded in Siberia, trying to make their journey out. Unique set of soldiers at your disposal. The soldiers' capacity, card-wise, is going to evolve along the way, both in positive and a negative aspect. You have to be able to draft them, to get them out, to play them, and to equip them on a turn-by-turn, round-by-round basis through a multi-phase system that they've developed. Rulebook is actually already over on Board Game Geek, and it's not as long or as complex as I was fearing. It's about 18 pages. So if that sounds digestible for you, that might be something to look-see, especially if you're not like a big war game fan like I am, but still like the variable player powers, a little bit of hand management, and action point comboing system that you can get with this. You know what? I'm not probably going to pre-order it, but I'm going to probably have it subscribed on the Board Game Geek page. Then we're going to go back trick-taking, and we're going to go to Jelly Jelly Games' next one called Fixer. And what you're doing here is you have a paper, scissors, rock, lizard, Spock style scenario going on here, but different trick-taking in a completely other way, because you're going to be playing these cards to different locations, but the conflict only happens when somebody plays a second card to an individual location. The regime controls the capital controls the media controls the people overthrow the regime. And so depending on who's there, well, you get to get the other person's points based on the cards that are laid. So as you're laying them down, Victor gets victory point tokens and takes their opponent's card as points. But the loser can choose to take the stronger card back into their hand. And that's the dynamic that you're going to be having to manage, master, and deal with once all the victory point tokens are gone. And so, again, as a light trick-taking style of game from 2 to 4 players, I could see this one really kind of hitting the mark. So I've got my eye on this one, but again, I'd argue that this one's probably got a little bit of more convolution to it too, with the 4 different factions and the paper, scissors, rock, lizard, Spock situation going on, might just be too much for people as a whole. So, it's probably not going to change your mind. Speaking of not changing your minds, this isn't going to change anyone's mind at all, but it's going to be for those that love it and want more of it, and that's the Gaia project expansion called The Lost Fleet. Access to new technologies, new gadgets, 4 new factions, new map layout, and, well, new scoring rounds that are going to go along with it. Additional balancing in terms of income, starting resources, or different costs for all of you meta players who have played this online ad nauseum to the point of, well, being bored by it. And, again, they play like hundreds of times in ranked games and that whole situation. Anyway, but This is going to be available, and it's going to be more for those that wanted more. So, you know, go check it out if you want. Then Nerd Lab Games is giving us another lightweight card style driven from the minds and the publishers behind Mindbug. We're now getting this with a competitive 2 to 4 player bluffing strategic set collection style. I split, you choose, where you're going to be influencing both strategies with that mechanic. Different agents and tools impacting scoring, and outwitting your opponents by collecting the sets and the tools that are going to allow you to successfully uncover your opponent before they do the same to you. It's going to be light. It's going to be family friendly. It's going to be player dependent, and it's going to be best at 2 players. So, you know, you heard me previously on the channel. I'm a big fan of Mindbug. If they can give me a little bit different with a little bit similar, I'm all for it. But again, just like Mindbug, it's going to be too crazy, might be too chaotic, might be too take that, and it might be just too light for you, especially in the setting of all these other heavies that we're talking about. So take that for what it is. A few new entries here at the end, because again, still browsing lists, still creating this video as we go. One of them is going to be Babylon, which is a twist on kind of a Foundations of Rome-esque vibe with the 3D plastic aesthetic that you're building your own hanging gardens on your own personal player board, trying to make it more aesthetically pleasing. As the Board Game Geek description goes, it's very popular with heavy gamers due to the large number of optimization possibilities, but it's also accessible to the whole family. Right? Mass appeal! Tile placement, modularity, construction materials, literal plastic pieces based on the pillars that you're going to have available to you and how you're going to aesthetically please it from that aspect of things. I think it's a very interesting concept. Is it going to stand up to the test of time? And I don't think it's going to do the Foundations of Rome thing, because it's like an actual 3D sculpture making game, so you can't really dumb it down to cardboard in that sense. But again, I don't think it would work either, because you've got sort of the Flames of Fafnir situation from crowdfunding earlier this year, where I said the plastic's probably molded in an exact certain way that it has to be done this way. So if you try and do that with cardboard, it's just not gonna freaking work. Then Catch Up Games in combination with Pandasaurus already has it on their website for pre-order for November retail. Castle Combo, where you're drafting a 3x3 grid for a total of 9 cards with the coins that you have available, trying to create an upper city and a lower city from 2 markets that are going to be there in your tableau, and using those strategic decisions to get the most points based on, well, what characters are also available, peasants, nobles, and, well, the gold that's going to be available along the way. And it is from the people who gave us Far Away. So if you didn't like Far Away and you're not like me, well, you can avoid this one like the plague. If you liked Far Away like I did, well, this one might just be a little bit better. $25 with free shipping right now on Pandasaurus for November retail release. Now, again, no extras and no shippings. I'd be lying if it's not a little tempting right now. Then we have Defenders of the Dictionary, not the Wild, not the Realm, but something altogether different in a word-based boss fighting, campaign-driven, fight your situations in word-based solutions until you get to, well, the boss at the end and then defeat them. So that one's supposedly going to have a little bit of demo, I think, at Essen, actually, but it's going to be crowdfunding later this year as well. Then going back to a few of the other ones that were already on my list, SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, right? Heavy deduction, Euro style as a whole. Is it going to be as good as people are expecting from that aspect of things? The other that is a little bit of a sleeper hit that I saw on a few lists is called Phoenix New Horizon. Hero Local Games is bringing us this Euro where you consume the team of commandos tasked with the mission of recolonizing Earth. 4 rounds, victory points, constructing regenerators. No, not generators, regenerators. I didn't do elitism there. Buildings, bolstering the population, and the objectives that are going to be dependent on the playthrough that you're doing at that time. Again, your commandos are going to be able to adapt and upgrade and change how they're going to be able to help you, but in that, well, upgradableness, there's your Liegeism, they're actually going to become more limited in their focus as well, giving you a different yield of additional actions that are going to be at your disposal. Does that sound intriguing? Yeah, I'd say so. Worker placement with a different actual mechanism to go along with it. Yeah, sign me up, 1 to 4 players. So then we have to end this with the heavy Euros for all you heavy Euros that watch this list in the first place, if you're looking for something along those lines, because that's what Essen is known for in the first place. First up is Intarsia, and we're going to be doing beautiful wooden ornaments on a parquet floor, which is a wooden floor in one of these fancy places. And you're doing, well, the Intarsia, which is the interwovenness of the, well, colors in some things, but actually wooden pieces in the first place, as it is more apropos here. What you're doing is puzzling them together from outwards to inwards. 4 different elements are going to be needed on each of these, scoring the victory points as you go, and pairing them with the materials of how you're going to be having to build them in the first place to give the cafe a new lease of life with their new pretty floor, right? You're doing flooring. All right, like dry Euro theme right there, right? And then Civolution, right? Where this is your medium heavy style game with a little bit of everything if you're looking for that as a whole. Because what you're doing is you're giving a unique dice action mechanism selection to trigger actions on a tech tree like structure to best use your dice, the unique skills, cards, and strategies along the way to get many different paths of victory. So you're only going to be exploring a fraction of possibilities each single game based on the cards, the dice, and the tech tree in the first place. So yeah, you're basically rebuilding civilization on an isolated continent, and you're a deity trying to just do it up with your tech tree. Nothing like deity and tech tree, right? Those two things go hand in hand. Ah, screw it. I can say whatever I want at the end of the video. No one's watching anyway at this point. Ha-ha! What do you think of that list? How do you like dem board games? That's all I got. Long enough video, enough games for you all in one. Why you maybe shouldn't get any of them, because again, you're going to see them on the hotness and they're going to be flash in the pans, or just like I talking about the must-haves in the crowdfunding from September's of years past, are they actually going to climb up and stay up in the rankings? We'll see. Time will tell. And boy howdy, will I ring it home either way. Subscribe. Need to say that earlier in the video. Have a great freaking fantastic day. Peace out. Stay classy.